Hey everyone, and welcome to my review of the Data East Volume 1 collection for the Evercade handheld console. I have already made a video for the console itself where I showed off the premium pack, which included obviously the console and the 3 game collections that came with it. But from this video onwards, we're going to be taking a look at the other game collections that you can purchase separately. If you want to see that original video, it will be linked down below. And I just want to mention that as far as I understand it, depending on where you buy the Evercade console, you do get different game collections in the bundle. I believe that the Data East 1 collection that I'm talking about here is included in the premium pack in the States, but that is not the case over here in the UK as far as I can tell. So of course that is something to bear in mind. And remember, if you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Right now we're aiming for that 1,000 subscriber milestone, so every single one of you genuinely does make a huge difference. But now let's talk about the games. What I'm going to do is give you a little bit of information on each game as we go through them, and then I'll give you my opinions and what I think about them. So the first game we're looking at is Burger Time. It was originally released in 1982, and the idea of the game is to build burgers while navigating the platforms and avoiding the enemies. See, I was born in 1988, so this was one that I definitely missed, but I have to say I quite enjoyed this one. And remember, I'm finding these games for the first time. I've heard of a lot of them, I've just never actually played them. I started gaming in 93, and I don't remember which console I had first, but I know I had the Sega Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo at the exact same time. I just don't remember which one I got first. So really anything from those consoles backwards I kind of missed, but it is interesting to go back and try these games out for the first time. Burger Time, a lot like the game Food Fight, I think is one of those kind of games that is deceptively difficult. It looks kind of easy, but I assure you that I had great difficulty playing this. I just found it very, very hard. I can only get past the first level, and I guess it's one of those things, these kind of games were meant to eat up money at the arcades and they weren't meant to be easy, and games have got a lot easier as time's gone on. So I did find it really interesting and really fun, and I would go back and play more of it. I mean, there's not a lot to say about these older games. They are what they are. There's no fluff. They just are what they are. And this is another one of those games that when I was recording, I ended up getting a lot more footage than I actually needed because I was still playing it and realized that I'd captured nearly 10-15 minutes of footage when I only needed about 2 minutes. So, it's kind of addictive, it's kind of fun, but yeah, overall I enjoyed this one and I'll definitely play it again. This next one is Burnin Rubber. It's a top-down arcade racing game with some kart racer type elements. It's another one from 1982, and yeah, again, a basic racing game, but I think the kart racing elements are really what sets this one apart and makes it stand out. I really like the way you can kind of jump. Occasionally you'll see in the gameplay that a little warning sign will come up and it will mean that you'll need to jump, and if you don't, you just fall into the water. There's also a few different ones on a few different levels that I got to in the end where you have to get through a small gap. It sort of looks like a wall with small holes in it, and obviously if you don't go the right way, you just crash straight into it. But again, it's got these little sort of extra things to think about, but I definitely had fun with it. It looks relatively nice for what it is, and I think it's got that feeling of just one more go, which I think a lot of these games had back in the day. Because they were so basic, they really needed repeat play, and obviously that works very well in an arcade setting because the more repeat play you get, the more money you bring in, etc, etc. So yeah, this one was pretty fun. This is another one that I think I will play some more of. I did end up playing a few rounds of it in the evening when I was just sitting there with it in handheld mode, and it was, yeah, enjoyable. Next, we have Bad Dudes, which should probably win an award just for the name alone, but it's a side-scrolling brawler game with some platforming stuff. It was originally released in 1988, and the plot of the game, assuming one could call it that, is that the president has been kidnapped by ninjas, and only the baddest of dudes can rescue him, which is actually a sentence that I just said to you. I don't know what to say about this one. It's not, good, at least to me. I mean, I think this game has a bit of a reputation, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's not very good. I don't know. I have this weird situation with this one. When you're playing through it, it feels like an okay brawler, when you first start playing, but then you start to notice all the flickering, and I'm sure I've seen that in gameplay of this somewhere else. Now, is that an emulation thing, or is that something that happens in the real game, like the NES version, with the actual cartridge and the console? Because I don't know for sure, because again, I never played it, but the way all the characters flicker and move, it just doesn't, it's not pleasant to look at. And of course the game is, I don't know, just not that great in general, to be honest. The collision's a bit weird, I find, and it's one of those games that just doesn't feel enjoyable to play, or at least to me. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that absolutely love this game, maybe ironically, maybe genuinely, I don't know, but for me, this was one that I would just skip probably. I can't see myself really trying to play much more of this one. It's a shame because I don't like to say old games are bad, but then again, like anything, right, it's all down to opinions. So yeah, this is probably not one I'll play again, but at least I can say I've tried it, and I guess you'll have to send my apologies to the president. And now it looks like we've got some more dudes. This time it's 2 Crude Dudes. This is another side-scrolling brawler, but apparently it's comic book inspired from what I've read. It was released in 1991 and features a lot of comical brutality, which seems to be kind of its selling point, as it's supposed to be kind of brutal but funny. And again, from what I've read, it's supposed to be very tongue-in-cheek. When I first started this one, it seemed like a bit of a step up in pixel art and just animation, just the way things worked and the things you could do in the game. A lot of things you could interact with in the environment and throw at enemies, different kind of punches and kicks, jumping attacks, being able to climb up and avoid enemies and things like that. And it's definitely an improvement over Bad Dudes, but it still wasn't that great, although I did have much more fun with this one. This one felt like a more competent brawler for me. It's still not something I would say that I loved, but I actually found it quite fun. This game had a full-on intro, which was quite nice, and luckily for me, it's quite generous with its continues because, yeah, I died pretty quickly. It takes a little bit of time for me to get used to these old games sometimes, and on the Evercade, some of the default button mapping is a bit off because sometimes the game will want you to press A to jump, but then in a different game it might be B to jump, and when you're switching between games like I've been, it can be a bit confusing, I suppose is the word. But luckily for me, the game is quite generous with continues, and it does have a difficulty setting in the options, so I think I'll lower the difficulty and get to learn the game a little bit more, and yeah, I'll definitely play this one some more. Next up, we have Fighter's History. This is one of your sort of standard 2D fighting games, you know, like Street Fighter or King of Fighters. It was released in '93, and while it is very similar to other fighting games, I'd actually never heard of it before at all, but it seems to be a fairly solid fighting game from what I've played so far. I've only tried a couple of the characters, but, you know, they do really just feel and play like a lot of Street Fighter characters. Even the quarter circle to do the Hadoken is basically what you can see in the gameplay when I'm firing the energy ball. And, you know, the characters are basically just, I don't want to say rip-offs, but they're like a poor man's version, which sounds mean, but it's not really meant in a derogatory way. It just is what it is. There's a wrestler guy that's kind of like Zangief. There's a martial artist that kind of looks a little like Ryu. There's a guy holding a rose, which kind of reminds me of Vega. A girl wearing all blue that just really looks like Chun-Li. So, you know, the comparisons are there. But for me, gameplay-wise, I have played a lot of, you know, 2D fighting games over the years, including Street Fighter 2 on the Mega Drive. And I think this game is not close to that one, but it feels pretty good to play, like in general, you know? I mean, the characters look fine enough, and some of the backgrounds are actually really nice. So anyone who's a fan of 2D fighting games will probably already know about this one, but if you don't, it's on this collection, and it's pretty good, so I'd recommend it to you. For me personally, I'm not super good at 2D fighting games, even though I play a lot of them, but I do think I will periodically come back to this one. It really isn't that bad at all. This next one I have actually heard of before, probably because it's been included in many retro collections over the years, but it's called Karate Champ, and it was released in '84. It's a 2D fighting game, but much slower pace and less involved than something like the previous game, Fighter's History. You'll need to use both attack and defense to win, but when I played it, I really couldn't figure out what I was supposed to do. I looked it up online, I read the little book that comes with the Evercade cartridges to understand what the buttons were, you know, which buttons are what. But I could not figure out for the life of me what you're really meant to do, because I get that you're supposed to block and attack when they're not really doing anything, but it always felt like, okay, I've punched you 3 times in a row, but nothing seems to happen, but then the 4th punch got me a point. And I don't understand why, because when you see the characters kind of come together, they have this kind of flickering thing going on when they get close, and I can't really figure out what the interaction is just by looking at it, so I think I might need to look a bit deeper into how it all works and what you're supposed to do. If you're someone who knows all about this game, please do correct me and let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know how it properly works so that I can, well, properly play it, you know? Overall, I suppose it looks good for the time that it came out, and it does what it's supposed to do, but I found it hard to enjoy because I couldn't really get a handle on what I was supposed to do or how I was supposed to do it. But that's a me thing. anything, that's not the game's fault, I don't think anyway. But yeah, if you know how it's supposed to work, let me know in the comments and I will give this one another go. Next up, we have Joe and Mac 2, Lost in the Tropics. This is one I've heard of many times because I think a lot of folks consider this series a bit of a hidden gem, at least as far as I've seen. I've never played any of them before, but it was released in 1984 and it's a platformer set in the prehistoric era. And the first thing that really struck me about this one was firstly how good the animation and the pixel art was, and secondly how responsive the controls were. I felt that it was really tight and it just worked, like it just did what it was supposed to do. And I can really see why people consider this to be somewhat of a hidden gem, as you know, the series in general. And I mean, you know, like most retro games, I'm absolutely crap at it, but I did enjoy it. Like I did have fun with it, you know. There's like a little cutscene at the beginning, you can go into different houses and rooms, and the presentation is just really good. You've of course got your general platforming stuff, killing the enemies with your club, and you can eat different things so that you can spit out the bones to give you a ranged attack. Plus there's even some little on-rails cart sections where you have to jump over gaps and avoid enemies, a little bit like you do in Donkey Kong Country when you're in the minecart. And yeah, overall this is one of the better ones on the cartridge, I would say, at least in my opinion, and I'm definitely going to try and get to the end of this one if I can. That's probably a big if, but we'll see. And the game we're looking at here is Magical Drop 2. This is a puzzle game from '95, which plays in a similar way to Tetris, kind of, but works from the bottom of the screen up, and you have to chain together colors to create combos. So the way it kind of works is you move the line underneath the colored orbs, and you can grab a certain number of them and then put them back. So you move over to one side, grab a couple of blues, then move over the other side, grab a blue that's there, then fire them back up in the hopes of hitting some more blues to create a combo. And obviously the more you can stack, the better the combo will be. But this one had a lot more going for it than I thought. Visually it's, you know, obviously quite nice, but it's got lots of different modes, including a story mode, which while basic, I didn't really expect it to have. I thought it would just be like a Tetris game where you just start the game and it is what it is, but no, it's got a lot more to it, and I appreciate that, especially in some older games. The character art is particularly nice, and this is definitely another one where I recorded far too much footage because I just got kind of addicted to it. It's funny, these kind of, I don't want to call it match 3 because it isn't, but it's kind of like a match 3 game in a way. Those match 3 games and this style of game really do addict me sometimes, not always, but sometimes they just hook me and I can't stop playing them. So I can definitely see me playing this of an evening, just sitting there, nice cup of coffee, just playing some Magical Drop 2. It's really fun, and if you do get this cartridge, I mean, you'll probably try every game on the cartridge, I would imagine, but this is a good one, and I'd recommend it to anyone who really likes puzzle games. And now we're on the second to last game in the collection, and this is Midnight Resistance. It's a run and gun game from 1989, and if you've ever played something like Metal Slug, then you'll probably understand how this game works. For me, I've never been a huge Metal Slug or run and gun fan in general, you know, Contra, all that kind of stuff. It's just never really been something that I've been interested in. I quite like the top-down ones like Smash TV and things like that, but generally the side-scrolling ones I've never been very good at. And that's not to say that the game is bad, it's just not something that I've ever really been into. But this one had some weird things. The first thing I noticed was that when you fire your weapon, you don't just press the button or hold down the button. It's like a toggle where you toggle fire on and off, and that felt very weird to play. I mean, you'll probably notice in the footage that I'm doing particularly badly. I mean, that could just be me being bad, but you know, it just felt very weird and counterintuitive to do it that way. It's like you had to toggle auto fire on and off. There was no way to just fire a couple of bullets or hold down the button to fire, and then when you let go of the button it stopped firing. It just didn't do that. I'm not sure if there's an option you can change or something, but from my first go through it felt very weird and very I don't know, unwieldy. Like I couldn't aim properly. I found it just weird to play. And again, completely could be a me thing, but if you've ever played this game, can you let me know if there's any way that you can turn that off or change that, because it felt very strange to me. It does have this kind of little upgrade economy going on, which I thought was pretty cool. During the game, when you kill some enemies, you can pick up what look like keys, and then in between levels, you can use those keys to unlock different weapons and upgrades, which I thought was pretty cool. I guess visually for the time, 1989, it's really not that bad looking. Not great, but not that bad either. But for me, the actual run and gun doesn't feel that great. See, I'm not good at things like Metal Slug, but I do find it infinitely more playable than this game. Bit of a shame, but I'm not super enthused to come back and play more of this one. And now we've arrived at the last game included on this collection, and it's Side Pocket, which is a pool simulator from 1993. I've not played this one before now. I've not played many pool simulators, to be honest, but after playing this one and doing a bit of research on it, I've read that it was considered one of the best pool simulators of its era. And yeah, I mean, after playing it, it plays surprisingly well from a game from 93. I mean, again, 93 was when I started actually gaming properly, when I was about 5 years old. So, you know, it's a long time ago, and it works really well. The physics of it are pretty nice. There's a lot of different options for things you can do. And again, this one kept me playing for a lot longer than I thought it would. I think it looks really nice. I think it plays really well. And even though it is just a pool simulator, I do keep wanting to go back to it. It must just be because of its pick up and play nature. At least that's what I would think. But yeah, this one was quite good. I would definitely play more of this. And overall, I really liked it. So there you go, that's everything included on this collection, and that's what I personally thought about each one. I'm honestly just really enjoying the Evercade handheld console, and I'm genuinely looking forward to the Versus home console in November. For me, the Data East Collection 1 only has a couple of misses, and everything else is honestly really good. I'm looking forward to playing more of this collection, and I'm definitely going to pick up some more. So let me know what you think about this particular collection in the comments section, and if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. With your help, we might be able to break the 1000 sub mark by Christmas, and I would greatly appreciate that. If you want to help support the channel, all the important links are in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.